Good afternoon and welcome to the 2021 Mitofsky Award ceremony to honor this year's awardee, Lawrence Bobo. My name is Michael Deli Carpini and I'm a member of the Roper Center Board and chair of this year's Mitofsky Award Selection Committee. For the second year in a row, we are holding this ceremony virtually. We're confident that we will get together in person next year and we'll celebrate Larry and last year's winner, Carolyn Bowman, in person, along with the 2022 awardee. We'll start today's ceremony with a short video about some of the recent work of the Roper Center at Cornell, featuring Kathleen Weldon, the center's Director of Data Operations and Communications. Please run the video now.
Thank you for joining us today to support the Roper Center for Public Opinion Research and to honor Professor Larry Bobo and his remarkable contributions to the study of public opinion. It is my privilege to tell you about some of the things that the Roper Center has accomplished over the last year.
At last year's Matowski event, I was able to announce the final transition to a completely new version of iPoll, now in use by all members, which has given us a solid technological foundation on which to build new tools and new collections. Since that time, over 300 new data sets and an unprecedented 25,000 new questions have been published. The recently developed methods collection has continued to grow, as has the Transparency Project, in which new submissions are reviewed by our data curators for disclosure and scored for transparency. Over 380 polls have been rated for disclosure as part of this project. Since 2017, when APOR called for the polling community to invest more resources in studying and improving U.S. state-level polling, the Roper Center has been developing the U.S. State Collection, which debuted this January. By entering questions from state polls in the database and adding state-level searching, Roper has been able to preserve and disseminate more state polls and increase the visibility and use of existing polls in the collection. To date, over 10,000 questions have been made searchable. We have added some other notable new collections to the archive. We digitized the Joe Belden papers from his work on the very first national college student polls. We are in the process of adding to iPoll internal top-line results from Mark Penn's work for Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential bid. Adam Berinsky and Eric Schickler have contributed over 500 new versions of reweighted early Gallup poll datasets, updated to allow better trending and cross-study comparisons. We are also bringing the American National Election Studies and the Cooperative Congressional Election Study datasets into the archive, joining the National Election Poll Exit Polls, AP Votecast, and the Upshot Voting District polls and other resources to make Roper Center the most comprehensive source of survey data on U.S. elections. Roper Center continues to support the next generation of public opinion researchers. This summer, we hosted 4 Andrew Kopat Fellows, more than in any previous year. Vincent Morrow, Emily Jackson, Genevieve Richards, and Jacob Harris, who is also the Roper Center Matowski Graduate Fellow for the 2021-2022 academic year. The fellows not only conducted research and worked in the archive, but also met with members of the board in a series of lively conversations about the field of public opinion research. Some of them are on this call today and will, I hope, continue to participate in the polling community. Finally, last month at the annual American Public Health Association conference, the Roper Center debuted the Health Poll Database, a portal into health-related data at the Roper Center, developed with support from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. An innovative and educational node network search tool teaches about the relationships between concepts in health while providing direct navigation to relevant questions in the database. Crosstabs on standard and health-related demographics offer easy analysis. Curated trends help users avoid potential pitfalls of trend creation by ensuring consistent question wording, response categories, and target populations over time, while allowing users to customize the trend by filtering by organizations, mode, or date range. None of this work would be possible without the support of the larger public opinion research community, including our board members, our member organizations, our data providers, volunteers serving on one of our advisory committees, and all of you here today. Thank you so much for helping Roper Center to continue to preserve and make accessible public opinion polls while encouraging new and responsible research. In doing so, I truly believe that the Center and all of you are both improving the study of public opinion and safeguarding the voice of the people for the future.
Thank you, Kathleen. Today's award was created to honor the life and work of the late Warren J. Mitofsky, an innovator in survey research and longtime chair of the Roper Center's Board of Directors. It has been given each year since 2007 to recognize outstanding contributions to the study and/or practice of public opinion research and survey methodology. To introduce this year's awardee, we have a video put together by two of Larry's former students, Camille Charles of the University of Pennsylvania and Maria Kreisen of the University of Illinois, Chicago. I should note that Larry has not seen this video yet.
The Warren Matowski Award recognizes those who have made powerful contributions to the field of public opinion or survey methodology through published scholarship or distinguished practice, presented at a conference or discussed in public media. The most casual perusal of Lawrence D. Bobo's CV makes the Roper Center's decision to bestow this award upon him obvious. Award-winning books, innovative original data collection projects, editorships, numerous publications in top journals across multiple disciplines, honorific society memberships, prestigious fellowships, invited lectureships, public commentary, and the list goes on. Powerful contributions? Check. Influence on the field of public opinion? Check. Innovation in survey methodology? Check. Conference presentations, scholarship, practice, public media? Check, 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 and check. Professor Bobo earned his BA in sociology from Loyola Marymount University in 1979, the same institution that conferred upon him an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters in 2001. He earned his MA and PhD at the University of Michigan in 1984. He's gone on to hold faculty positions on 3 coasts: University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of California, Los Angeles, Harvard University, Stanford University, and then back to Harvard, where he's been since 2008. Larry is the W.E.B. Du Bois Professor of the Social Sciences, with appointments in the departments of African and African American Studies and Sociology. In 2018, he was appointed Dean of Social Sciences at Harvard, a position he currently holds. Throughout his career, Larry has held administrative positions where he helped guide and shape important research centers focused on the study of race and ethnicity. UCLA's Center for Research on Race, Politics, and Society, Stanford's Center for Comparative Study in Race and Ethnicity, and Harvard's W.E.B. Du Bois Institute for Afro-American Studies. While directing UCLA's Center for Research on Race, Politics, and Society, Professor Bobo was one of the researchers spearheading the multi-city study of urban inequality, an innovative and ambitious survey data collection endeavor that resulted in numerous journal articles, several edited volumes, and book manuscripts addressing issues of racial inequality in the United States in the 1990s. The McSUI project also shaped the careers of many young scholars involved in the project as research assistants or junior faculty, including me and my friend and colleague, Maria, but more on that later. In collaboration with political scientist Michael Dawson, Professor Bobo co-founded Du Bois Review, Social Science Research on Race, a journal devoted to advancing research and criticism on race, spanning all disciplines in the social sciences. He's guest edited special issues for Daedalus, Social Psychology Quarterly, and Public Opinion Quarterly, and his own research has appeared in books, edited volumes, and journals. True to public opinion's heritage as spanning multiple disciplines, Professor Bobo's work has appeared in the top field-defining journals in sociology, social psychology, and political science. He's given countless major public lectures and regularly pens popular essays, opinion pieces, and blogs. From his graduate school years, when he was awarded the ASA Minority Fellowship and first place in the Student Paper Award from the American Association of Public Opinion Research, to fellowships at the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences, the Russell Sage Foundation, the Fletcher Foundation, and the Guggenheim Memorial Foundation, to his election into the National Academy of Science, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and the American Philosophical Society, to his being honored with the 2020 APOR Award for Exceptionally Distinguished Achievement. Professor Bobo's powerful scholarly accomplishments in the social sciences, public opinion, and survey research are evident.
But the picture crafted from a CV doesn't begin to illustrate the multitude of reasons that Professor Bobo so richly deserves this award. We were both fortunate to have been influenced early in our careers in different ways by Larry. In Camille's case, as his student and research assistant at UCLA, and in my case, as a social psychology student at Larry's alma mater, the University of Michigan. I was a student of his mentor, Howard Schuman, who was the 2017 Mitofsky Award winner. Howard, fortunately, convinced Larry to serve as an outside member on my dissertation committee. As we reflect on how Larry has influenced our own careers, we realize that he has done the same for the study of public opinion. To that end, we'll divulge a few stories of the former and hope to draw out a few examples of the latter as we elaborate on Professor Bobo's most important contributions to our understanding of social life, in particular in the areas of race, race relations, and racial attitudes. First, Larry is a torchbearer for the use of survey research to advance our understanding of race through his direct influence within social psychology, and then in his insistence that other social science disciplines engage with social psychology and its insights. As a graduate student in the same department where Larry got his degree, about a decade later, I came into possession of a secret notebook compiled by earlier generations of Michigan students who were preparing for their social psychology preliminary examination. Larry was among the student contributors to this historical document, full of tips for studying, summaries of core social psych literature, and suggestions for what not to do on the exam. The prelim study tool helped generations of Michigan graduate students grapple with social psych, but I also discovered upon rereading it some decades later, can't help it, I'm kind of a pack rat, that it had seeds of one of Larry's central intellectual contributions. Specifically, it had Larry's prelim exam answers along with the comments of his graders. One prelim question asked its students to identify a social psychological fad or fashion that would likely be dead in 10 years. In his answer, Larry identified symbolic racism as one such fad. Although he wasn't quite right about symbolic racism's potential longevity, it lasted a little longer than a decade, his grader observed, quote, discussions on the topics chosen are well-informed and pungent, although the symbolic racism discussion is better done than the other one on alienation. Perhaps the student feels more strongly there. The grader got that right, because one of Larry's marks on social psychology and our understanding of racial attitudes through public opinion has been to make an argument for an alternative to symbolic racism, so-called laissez-faire racism, that provides a more compelling interpretation of contemporary racism, one that exemplifies a truly social psychological perspective. And fortunately, he has done this elaboration in a more public venue than a prelim answer in grad school. Larry has also breathed new life into Bloomer's theories on intergroup relations and racial prejudice, which were theories that lay largely dormant for decades. He elegantly builds on Bloomer's insights and creates his own theoretical statements to cast new light on racial prejudice, showing that anyone truly interested in understanding prejudice can both use survey data to do it, but also requires that they contend with the social context and conflicts in which people live. So those keeping track, the second reason Larry is an ideal recipient of this award is that he asks and answers the big questions. In other words, he's most certainly made powerful contributions. And Camille and I both have personal and memorable, if not stress-inducing kinds of experiences with Larry's insistence to always push academia to be relevant to the real world. For example, Larry was the outside member of my dissertation committee, as I mentioned, and the night before my defense, I received the first detailed feedback from him on my dissertation. It was in the form of an email since he was unable to attend the defense in Ann Arbor. Among other things, he wrote, quote, "You seem to shy away from engaging what it is we learn about the state of race relations, not survey research, given your results. It is never packaged, or at least I do not read it, as addressing what this says about where we are in race relations at the moment." So needless to say, I spent a long and sleepless night trying to figure out how I could answer that question. Although I was probably largely unsuccessful in actually coming up with an answer, because we know our midnight thoughts are never that great, I nevertheless survived, and I'm happy to report I passed my defense. But as I reflect on my own personal experience with this feature of Larry's work, I realize that just as he has pushed me to ask the big questions, so too has he pushed the field to do this through his scholarship and editorships. He's a gifted and creative methodologist who brings that creativity to bear, not to answer purely methodological questions, but to answer the big questions we need to ask about race and race relations. He did this as part of a group to reintroduce the measurement of racial stereotypes into the General Social Survey in the 1990s. He did this when he developed with colleagues the idea of laissez-faire racism. He did this when he wrote the award-winning book, Prejudice in Politics, with former student and now colleague Mia Tuan. In this book, which APOR recognized with its Best Book Award in 2018, Larry and Mia combine relevant and important historical context with innovative open-ended questions and rigorous survey data analysis to fully develop a group position perspective that highlights individual feelings and stereotypes, vested interests, political threats, and group interests. I personally use this book in my graduate methods courses as an exemplar of it, nuanced, engaging, and contextualized survey research. And I regularly turn diehard anti-survey researcher sociology graduate students into converts to the value of the method when they read this book. Camille tells me she uses it in her graduate courses on theories of race and ethnicity as an exemplar of the development of a nuanced theoretical framework that moves beyond Black-white dichotomies and is vital to present-day understandings of prejudice and inequality in the US. Prejudice in Politics is thus a superb illustration, particularly for those who tend to be, as Howard Schuman put it, survey skeptics, of the way in which survey research can be a powerful tool to provide a window into racial prejudice while also asserting a critically important theoretical advancement. In other words, Larry brings a social psychological lens to understanding big questions about contemporary race relations and uses the tools of survey research in innovative ways to advance them.
The third reason Larry's an ideal recipient for this award is that he's had a powerful and direct impact on the field of social psychology, an influence that has also reached sociology and political science more generally. First, Larry has been an important voice in keeping race, race relations, racial inequality, and racial prejudice on the minds of social psychologists in particular. This can be witnessed in the special issue he edited for Social Psychology Quarterly, in the way he has directed or directly or indirectly helped keep a healthy and valuable supply of racial attitudes questions on the General Social Survey, and of course, by his own scholarship. Second, Larry forces sociology and other disciplines to reckon with social psychology. He has brought the sociological social psychology lens to political science and psychology. He challenges symbolic racism with a more contextualized and sociologically informed laissez-faire racism. He has made Herbert Bloomer a household name. He has contested purely political interpretations of racial policy attitudes by insisting on the combined role of sociology and psychology with a crucial role for power and conflict. To be blunt, psychological social psychologists, political scientists, sociologists, and political psychologists whose scholarship is on racial inequality or race relations must know and engage with Professor Bobo's work and incorporate his social psychological perspective. Indeed, Larry has influenced other sub-areas within sociology. For example, conventional wisdom on the causes of racial residential segregation has been revised to include a social psychological lens, in large part due to Larry's important contributions. Third, Larry's impact on the field has also come through his nurturing, through his work, his actions, and with his helping hand of the next generation of social scientists who study race. Larry has mentored and advised many students over the course of his career. A generally quiet person, he guides and trains by instilling confidence in, making time for, and maintaining extremely high expectations of those of us who consider him to be their mentor. As his graduate student at UCLA, I recall the beginning of a 3-day weekend. As I left on Friday evening, I said goodbye to Larry, telling him that I'd see him on Tuesday. Larry asked why Tuesday, and I reminded him of the Monday holiday and that the university was closed. Without looking up and with what I felt was complete sincerity, he responded, "You have a key." I worked at least a half day that Monday, but I also realized that I had nearly unfettered access to one of the greatest minds in the field, and that it was important to him that I take the work seriously and that I take myself seriously. He pushed me to think broadly and critically, to read everything I could get my hands on, and to stand up for what I knew to be true, especially when it might be unpopular, relying on rigorously collected and analyzed empirical evidence based in solid theory. Larry chaired my dissertation committee, and as Maria revealed earlier, his detailed, insightful, and intimidating comments tended to come late, though not as late as Maria's did. The longer it took for him to respond, the worse I expected it to be, and usually I was right. The email would begin with something like, "You still have a great deal of work to do," and ended with something along the lines of, "You're on the right track, just need to dig a little deeper and push a little harder." As a graduate student, I knew I'd made the cut when he introduced me as his colleague rather than as his student.
So after 3 decades, Larry still reads Camille's work and she still gets those emails. He still works long and hard, is still generous with his time, and still has extremely high expectations. There are scores of students sprinkled throughout the country who have directly benefited from his generosity. And speaking for them, I can tell you that we all feel deep gratitude for his influence on the scholars, advisors, and people that we've become. This, we believe, is an equally important illustration of Larry's powerful contribution to public opinion and survey research. We, in turn, all feel a deep responsibility and commitment to give to our own students what Larry has given to us. We continue to be inspired by his example, as I was more than 30 years ago reading Larry's prelim notes and Camille when co-authoring her first paper with him as a graduate student, expected to work weekends and holidays. In hindsight, great preparation for a life in academia. We all continue to be pushed by his critiques, as I was since the night before my dissertation defense, and Camille was, and probably still is, by those emails. His work always teaches us something new about the big questions we need to be asking. But lest we leave you with a one-sided sense of Larry as only a scholar, we would be remiss if we didn't also mention that Larry loves
West Coast rap,
fine dining,
sitting courtside at Celtics games,
fine wine,
a good cigar,
a martini done just right,
and he's also got a pretty wicked sense of humor, and he loves his alma mater. My first job out of graduate school was at the Ohio State University. In those years, as you know, Michigan is their big rival. I was there for 3 years, and Michigan beat Ohio State every one of those years. And the Monday after every one of those games, I was greeted by a voicemail from Larry singing the Michigan fight song with a little chuckle at the end. And that
if we're lucky,
yes.
If
Go
we're
ahead.
lucky, maybe Larry would, give that rendition this evening. But with that having been said, the warmest congratulations to Professor Lawrence Bobo on this well-deserved honor.
Thank you very much for that heartfelt introduction, Camille and Maria. Now we'd like to show a video from Larry with his acceptance speech.
It is an enormous honor for me to receive the 2021 Roper Center Warren J. Mitofsky Award for Excellence in Public Opinion Research. Let me first thank Professor Michael Della Carpini and others on the award committee for this recognition, as well as all of those on the Roper Center board. The Roper Center itself, as well as the remarkable career and contributions of Warren Matowski, have been key lodestars for me throughout my career. I'm very happy to think of myself as having a meaningful connection to the important work done here and the kinds of resources the Roper Center represents for those of us committed to employing survey research. I would be remiss if I did not remark at the outset that I first met Warren Matowski in 1981 at the very first American Association for Public Opinion Research conference that I ever attended. Warren was one of those who warmly welcomed me as a graduate student paper award winner and helped then to inspire what's become a long connection to it. Attendance at conferences and a spate of shared terms of service on the APOR Council brought me into more frequent contact with Warren over the years. Plainly enough, he was an energetic, brilliant man and a very direct and unapologetic voice on those things he cared about. Deeply etched into my own personal memory of Warren Matowski is his commitment to high standards in the conduct, uses, and reporting of survey data, and his deep passion for the field of survey research and the complex of commercial, government, and nonprofit, and academic researchers who were dedicated to this powerful research tool. I've likewise tried to live into these qualities that Matowski exemplified so very well. In the light of these memories, as well as his own enormous legacy of lasting contributions to survey research and to the Roper Center, I'm deeply honored to receive the Mitofsky Award. In thinking about my remarks for this occasion, I thought I would offer a few reflections on my own career as a survey research analyst and practitioner. Thinking back now, very far back, though I didn't do it with a career ambition in mind at the time, the very first survey I ever conducted took place in 1973, when I was a junior in high school. In an effort to establish just how mature and thoughtful we students were about our own behaviors and conduct, we decided to field a survey at my high school in order to gauge support for a designated smoking area for students who smoked, a still somewhat common habit at the time. I hand tallied the results along with a friend and prepared a report for the school principal, my first outing in survey research. From there, as a senior in college, working on my senior seminar paper, I developed a survey on racial attitudes and particular thoughts and beliefs about the African-American family. At that time, I inadvertently stumbled upon race of interviewer effects with my self-completion questionnaire, which sometimes I would distribute, and on other occasions, my white fellow students or professors would distribute. We got radically different results depending upon which one of us was handing out the questionnaire. But it was in graduate school at the University of Michigan where I became immersed in the possibilities of using surveys as a very, very special tool for examining and revealing critical social dynamics and processes, for engaging in the exercise of what might be regarded as the empirically grounded use of the sociological imagination. As many of you know, I worked closely with Howard Schuman and Charlotte Stee on the first edition of the book, Racial Attitudes in America, Trends and Interpretations. Our work was facilitated, in fact, by a listing prepared by the Roper Center for us of all of the cataloged national surveys that had ever asked questions on race, particularly those questions that had been repeated more than once over at least a 5-year span of time. Our project, which has become intellectually quite important in this arena, would have been virtually impossible without this critical starting point and information. Howard passed along to me a recognition of the value of bringing strategies of representative sampling of interesting and important populations and linking it to the ordinary research task of asking people questions in order to learn about their thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, and experiences. Mary Jackman in Michigan at the time taught me the importance of having a theoretically serious and empirically grounded way of understanding racial attitudes and intergroup dynamics. And Jim House imparted an appreciation for the broad research tradition of social structure and personality. But the Michigan folks weren't the only contributors to my commitment and enthusiasm about survey research as a tool of investigation. Paul Lazarsfeld was an important intellectual inspiration, particularly his admonition that students of public opinion should aspire to be good servants of deeper historical understanding of people, their times, challenges, and places. And to numerous others, such as Paul Sheetsley at NORC and Julian Woodward, who reminded us of the need to always richly contextualize answers to survey questions with information on respondents' level of real knowledge and information about an issue, the intensity and centrality of their opinions, their own readiness to act on underlying opinions and beliefs, and the like. On the basis of this sort of background and foundation, it's not surprising that I developed a dissertation project while in graduate school using national election study data and general social survey data to examine patterns of change and the underpinnings of racial attitudes in the United States. Issues and data sources that have been a part of my career ever since in all the ensuing years. Since that time, I've taken part in many, many different projects, chairing a group that produced the intergroup tolerance module for the General Social Survey, along with Tom Smith in 1990, working on as one of the principal investigators of the multi-city study of urban inequality project that tried to bring large multi-ethnic samples in 4 major cities to understanding the interplay of changing labor market dynamics, neighborhood and residential segregation dynamics, and intergroup attitudes and beliefs, and shaping larger patterns of inequality in our changing urban environments, as well as launching my own very independent surveys, such as the one that produced the book Prejudice and Politics, that was a critical examination of the hunting, fishing, and gathering rights controversy in the state of Wisconsin with regard to the rights of Chippewa Indians there, the Ojibwe people. In all of that, I've done what I could to work closely with extremely talented students who were also acquiring this passion for survey research, some of them well represented here, like Maria Creason, who played a critical role in the multi-city study of urban inequality project, as did Camille Z. Charles, another critical figure there, both of whom who have gone on to author phenomenally important, outstanding sociological works based on innovative survey analysis, and Vincent Hutchins, who did really important theoretical work with me in Los Angeles at the time of the uprisings there that I think have led to widely influential research on the dynamics of racial attitudes, both here in the US and for theoretical purposes in many, many other settings as well. As I think about this career, I've been more recently still continuing to exemplify that concern with how asking questions in representative samples can be put to powerful use in ways that exemplify the sociological imagination, and to try to come to grips with some of the challenges and hurdles that survey research faces, from the increasing costs of waging surveys, particularly those that are representative face-to-face surveys, the challenges faced by telephone surveys as we all move toward cell phones, smartphones, our little handheld devices that make sampling frames for surveys, I believe, that much more challenging to pull together in a convincing, statistically meaningful way. And just other challenges that we faced in terms of respondent cooperation and exhaustion with constantly being surveyed, which our enterprise has become kind of a ubiquitous feature of social life, with every product you buy seemingly want to survey you immediately after the purchase, or after the Uber ride, or after the online grocery service. Despite all of that, it continues to be an enterprise that I think has served society well, and that an organization like the Roper Center rightly is dedicated to preserving and carrying forward critical aspects of this legacy. For someone like me, who spent more than 30 years designing, conducting, analyzing, interpreting surveys, helping to train others in this line of work, and continuing to find it a powerful tool for social analysis, it really is an extraordinary honor to ever be mentioned in the same sentence, in the same breath, as Warren Matowski, who is a pioneering innovator in survey research from my point of view. So I want to thank you all for bestowing this incredibly important, prestigious, and just profoundly meaningful honor on me. I will continue to do my work, and that hope that you and others find it useful as we engage in this common enterprise of putting surveys to use and understanding and improving our social lives. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for that, Larry. I know you are here live on this call, and we're now going to turn to a short Q&A. I want to say right off the bat, congratulations again for this well-deserved award. And I have a few prepared questions for you, but I also want to invite the audience to feel free to enter any questions or comments you might have in the chat. And if there is time, because we have a limited amount of time, I'll ask one or two of those to you as well. Before we start, Larry, this is the first time, as I mentioned, you've seen the wonderful introduction by Camille and Maria, who are both in attendance. I won't ask you to sing the Michigan Fight song, but I'd like to give you a moment to share your reactions to that introduction.
Thank you so much, Michael. And again, let me thank you and your committee, as well as the Roper Center board, for this honor. I'm completely humbled by the excessive praise passed on by Professor Charles and Professor Creason. It's just way over the top, and far more than I shall ever truly deserve. I will say I have been extraordinarily fortunate over the full range of my career to have worked with enormously talented young scholars, and really just terrific people. And I am pleased, Camille, that you finally realized you didn't belong in Columbus, Ohio. And I will definitely adjust to Maria being in Chicago. That's fine. and our mutual tie to the University of Michigan. So my heartfelt thanks to both of them for that excessive praise. And what is a good mentor if he doesn't leave behind a couple traumas that motivate you throughout life?
Well, I'd like to touch on that notion of mentorship, because one theme that ran through their introductions and your own comments was the importance of mentorship and passing on both the techniques of and passion for survey research as a tool for understanding critical issues of the day. This is an important role for those of us like myself and you who are academics, but creating new generations of survey researchers is relevant to the profession writ large as well. You also mentioned, however, that the many challenges survey research now faces. So how optimistic are you about the future of surveys as a way to, as you put it, empirically examine the sociological imagination? Are there particular approaches or innovations you see as promising? What advice would you give to younger scholars and practitioners who are considering entering the field?
Yeah, it's a terrifically important and right before us set of questions, really. And I guess I'm reasonably confident. Optimism might not be the word I would use, because there are formidable challenges out there, but certainly the advent and spread of the internet and the capacity to do internet surveys, I think, has driven down, for many purposes, some of the extraordinary cost hurdles that have curtailed the reliance on surveys in many arenas. Innovative thinking about how to sample or how to connect random samples with opt-in samples in a way that produce meaningful results. All of those things, I think, are very worthy developments. And useful ones. In addition, I think at least the part of the legacy I think I've tried to craft, and that others have also attempted to advance, is to really make more robust use of the full array of techniques that we have. You know, embedding experimental manipulations within surveys, so we have a little more causal control over some questions that are and hypotheses that are of interest to us. Being much more often in the business of employing open-ended questions to really get respondents to explain in their own words the kind of frames of reference they have brought to issues and matters that we've decided to ask them more forced choice questions about. I think all of those things are to the good. The capacity to show videos online and just bring a different level of power and control to what we do gives me some optimism about possibilities in the future, and that we certainly should by no means be turning away from it. And my last comment on this line will be the success of and institutionalization of groups like the Pew Center and the extraordinary work they often do on an important array of questions, as well as the other longer standing survey research organizations, from Gallup in the commercial world to NORC and Michigan and so on.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And I share your cautious optimism, let's call it, for the future of this enterprise. In a related kind of way, you've done important work that utilizes national surveys, certainly. But one marker, I think, of your research is the use of surveys that focus on local populations, selective, often marginalized groups, and specific case studies as ways to understand larger processes and patterns. Talk a bit about this choice, the value you think it adds, and if you think as academics or practitioners, we should be doing more of this kind of work.
I really am convinced that we should be doing a lot more of this kind of work, in part because it lets us do far more thick contextualization of any particular issue or problem that we're examining. When I think about the work that I did ultimately along with Mia Tuan on the book Prejudice in Politics, Group Position, Public Opinion, and the Wisconsin Treaty Right controversy, that we were able to really follow local news media coverage, to document that coverage over a long stretch of time, to really design a study that was tailored to how the conflict itself was actually playing out, and that allowed us to craft questions that both spoke to big general theoretical issues, but that connected to the specifics of what was happening in that environment. Similarly, I like to think I was somewhat prescient at shortly prior to what became the 1992 riots in LA. I launched a survey at UCLA called the Project on Ethnic Antagonism. And so, as researchers, it's one of those rare occasions where we did a pretty good job of anticipating what was about to happen, so that halfway through the survey, the riots began, and we were able to quickly raise money and kind of double the sample size and get a big pre-post test of impact of this kind of dramatic event on racial attitudes. But I think that's hard to do outside the sense of embeddedness in a particular complex place and set of issues. So I think it gives us, there's a power in thorough, deep case study work that I think we don't give enough credit to. This is an old way of casting this, but if you weren't working with national data, there was certainly a view at one point, right, that you weren't doing manly research. The big impactful scholarship had to have a national sample behind it. Then that's, I think, simply not always the case.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's more evident now than it's been in a long time, if you think about the role of the state and local and politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Right
now. Yep. While you focus on a wide range of methodological and substantive topics in your research, a central focus obviously has been on issues of race and ethnicity, racism, and prejudice. We are at a moment where these issues have become a more visible part of the public conversation. How well do you think survey research has and is contributing to this public dialogue? What might we do to help inform this discussion in more useful, timely ways?
Yeah, I think we're at a point where survey research probably does a great deal more than it ever has in the past to continuously inform the discourse, instead of there just, say, being one big, as there was, say, in 1965, Lou Harris poll that Newsweek publishes. And then, there's a gap of years before there's anything that kind of ambitious that happens. So at the same time, I worry that we too sometimes descend into a kind of a horse race approach to these things. Are race relations better or worse? Well, race relations are an enormously complex set of phenomena, and one or two questions about whether the current president has made things better or worse, are we headed in the right or wrong direction? My goodness, there's so much else going on out there. How are our schools doing? How are police community relations doing? Are we reducing segregation of our neighbor? You know, there's so many other features to these issues. And I like to think we're now in a better position to serve that. But I don't think it happens quite as much as it should or could. But I think we're at a much richer, more developed point than at any previous point as researchers to contribute, as a research community to contribute to that discourse.
Yeah, excellent points. And in a kind of related question, two of the questions on the chat, one from Susan Pincus and one from Scott Keeter, both wondered on your views, maybe moving even a little bit beyond the data that you have, about what your sense is at the moment of the state of race relations and the reckoning that we're in right now. I realize, as you said, it's complicated, but you were on a great panel yesterday. I hope many of the people here saw that, attended that. But could you give a few more thoughts about where your head is right now on the state of race?
Sure. You know, I guess I find myself deeply concerned about the current moment. With the Trump presidency, we saw in the White House a figure prepared to exploit racial and ethnic tensions with the full legitimacy, respect, and authority of the White House behind it in a way that really I don't think has ever existed in the American experience, except perhaps with the occasion of, Woodrow Wilson showing Birth of a Nation at the White House. I mean, we've had very few such experiences, and that, quite frankly, taking a historian's kind of perspective now, is a dangerous thing in terms of the legitimacy it extends to a lot of bigoted and extremist points of views and orientations. So I do worry about that. On the other hand, I think we have evidence out there. Let's take the electoral results and how much better, in a way, Biden Harris did versus Clinton Kaine in 2016, that there is a multiracial coalition of Americans who are majoritarian. Unless over the next 2 to 4 years, we see more and more rollbacks in terms of the reporting of state data and the capacity being granted in some arenas for state legislators to literally nullify the vote in various states. That's a dangerous development in terms of the rights of minorities, Black and Brown, and our Asian American citizens in general. And so I worry greatly about that, and I don't quite see the coalescence of the viewpoints, the mobilization, the ideas to roll back this really frightening grab for power, in many respects, based largely at its root on racial division. And so I worry greatly about that. And frankly, the survey data shows plenty of evidence about how that is working. And so we can document it, but boy, we've also got, as citizens and people concerned about democracy and our collective futures, to frankly mobilize against it.
Yeah, all excellent, if not very sort of depressing points, but I agree with your analysis there. We're about to wrap up. I have a few people to thank, but I just wanted again congratulate you, Larry. This is a really well-deserved award. I know for many of us who do public opinion research in the academic field, we depend on your work a lot. And so thanks for all that you've done, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks again to your committee and to all those involved with the Roper Center, and to the students, friends, and others who turned out this evening. My thanks to all of you. And aside from saying Go Blue, let's keep this enterprise alive and thriving.
You're at Harvard now, Larry. Try to remember that. Okay. All right. Well, there are other people that I would like to thank before we wrap up. I want to thank the members of the Mitofsky Award Selection Committee, Melissa Herman, Vince Hutchings, and Susan Pincus. Thank you to the members of the Matowski Award Events Committee, Liz Hamill, Kylie McGeaney, Susan Pincus, Nancy Belden, Gary Langer, Brett Powell, Henry Smith, and Kathleen Weldon. Thank you to Jeff Gruber and Blue House Productions for help with the production of today's virtual event. Thanks to Robert Enns, Jonathan Schult, Brett Powell, Kathleen Weldon, and the rest of the Roper Center at Cornell's staff for all the amazing work you do to maintain and build the Roper archives and make them available to all of us. Thanks to Bob Shapiro and the rest, who's chair, and the rest of the Roper Center board for all the work that you do during the course of the year. And let me just see here for a second, shut something down. And certainly last but not least, if we could put the slide up, I think it is up. I want to thank all the sponsors of today's event, whose support is used to keep the Roper Center going and to expand the work we're doing. And finally, to thank all of you who attended today for attending, but also for the support you've shown for the Roper Center during the year itself. Please continue that support, and I hope to see all of you in person at a live event about a year from now, where we'll get to toast Larry once again and our 2022 awardee. With that, thanks everyone, and have a good evening.